So this is the Not Ashamed tour. I think we are, I obviously come from the United Kingdom. I'm here to talk to you about what's happened in the United Kingdom. I've been in the public space for 30 years, not as long as Ros and David, but I've been contending in the space for this amount of time, one way or another. And I think I come to you at a moment of where we're honouring Ros and David for their faithfulness. And this organisation, they're actually now handing the baton to Ashley. So in this moment in time, what will Family Voice Australia do? Will there be a voice that rises for faith, family and freedom in your nation at this time? Well, I know that there are various groups that are standing in the gap right now, but there could be many. And there's never enough. And what we want is to see Family Voice rise up and take a stand in the public space for Jesus Christ and to contend for faith, for family and for freedom. And in order to do that, we say that we're not ashamed of the gospel and we're not ashamed of holiness. And a holy people is a happy people. And we want to see Australia transformed at every level. Now, there's a sense in which we've lost in the Western world and we've lost in the Commonwealth world. The Commonwealth world, so blessed by a great Christian heritage, dating right back to the Magna Carta, rooted in biblical precepts that absolutely infuse our public life. Our parliament, prayers in parliament at the beginning of the day, our law courts, services of dedication at the beginning of the day, historically. Our schools, Christian assemblies. Our hospitals, when Bibles were handed, when the ward sister finished from one ward to the other. That, education and hospitals, all provided by Christians. All of this, the Christian missionaries going from Britain to all corners of the earth and risking their lives for the gospel. And the world owed a great debt to that. And it wasn't because we're British. It wasn't because we're British. But it was actually because we were rooted unashamedly and unabashedly in the gospel, in King Jesus. And we were unashamed of his name. And so that infused government, law, media, business, the arts, education, and the church. What is the gospel? I'm going to ask you that question. What is the gospel? I can tell that you know. So you tell me. Just give me some words.
Good news of Jesus Christ.
The good news of Jesus Christ.
What God has done.
What God has done. Who Jesus is, salvation. I want to look at what the gospel is, and I want to look at it from the Genesis to Revelation. Jesus was present in the creation of the earth. And it was this: God made the heavens and the earth and the sky and the animals and the sea and the land, and he made male and female. And he took the rib from Adam and he made the female, and he said, together they are good. And the man needs a helper, and together they are good. And they are then to subdue the earth. They're to have children, and they're to subdue the earth. They're to cultivate. They're to cultivate the earth. So they're to grow goodness in the earth. So this is a very high standing of who we are, the beauty of who we are, made in his image. And this is good. This is stunning. This is a stunning first principle, for it doesn't apply just to the people that know Jesus. It applies to every person on the planet. So whoever we're dealing with, we know that they are made in the image of God. Every person is made in the image of God, no matter what they're doing, no matter what religion they are, no matter whatever they might be doing, no matter what their lifestyle, that person is made in the image of God. We also know, right there in the centre of the gospel, and Jesus coming as man, he came, the most perfect man, the only perfect man ever to have lived, who paid the sacrifice of his life for our wrongdoing, because just as we're all made in his image, so we all don't live up to his standard. And so he paid the penalty for our sin. And this is we need to accept this in order to know eternal life. So there we have the heart of the gospel, the personal salvation. And then we go to Romans. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Australia is without excuse. The Commonwealth is without excuse. God created. God is good. For although they knew God, although Great Britain knew God, although Australia knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. And although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal human beings and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore, what did God do? He gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things. Do we do that? Rather than the Creator. You know, actually this cult of self, this cult of the selfie, this cult of shades of grey and, you know, all of this stuff that we're supposed to be. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even the woman exchanged natural sexual relationships for unnatural ones. And in the same way, men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust with one for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Is that where we are? Yes. So there's nothing new. We're not to be taken by surprise by what we're experiencing today. It was there in Roman pagan times. And it's the exchange of the truth of God that is known to worshipping created things. So what do? What's the pattern? There's nothing new under the sun. We suppress the truth. We exchange the truth for a lie. We worship and serve created things, the narcissism of our culture. We practice them, and then we approve of them. We approve of them culturally. We approve of them by way of practice. Then we approve of them in law. So why do I have cases? Because Christians that love the Lord and say, we will not obey that law. We cannot tolerate that law. They find themselves in trouble with what has been approved by the state, approved in law. And so that's how you get into a position where in Great Britain we're seeing people lose their job because they're proclaiming the truth. And Romans 1, it goes on to say, for I am not ashamed of the gospel. Because what is the gospel? The power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. First to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel is what? What is revealed? The righteousness of God is revealed. A righteousness that is by faith from first to last. Just as is written, the righteousness will live by faith. Now, the gospel is the power for salvation. The gospel is the righteousness of God. And then we move to Revelation, where we see the bridegroom, Jesus Christ, coming to meet who? Clean the church. Ready, prepared, beautiful, cleansed. The image, the marriage image, the creation image, the whole orb of the gospel. I want to look at how a nation can change very quickly. Coronation Oath, 1953, June the 2nd. 64 years or so ago. Will you, to the utmost of your power, maintain the laws of God and the true profession of the gospel, and maintain the Protestant Reformed religion? The Queen promises to do this. She's handed a Bible by the Archbishop of Canterbury to keep your majesty ever mindful of the law and the gospel of God as the rule for the whole life and government of Christian princes. We present you with this book, the most valuable thing that this world affords. Here is wisdom, this is the royal law, these are the lively oracles of God. This is in the Queen's coronation oath. And when your senators, when your state and federal representatives are sworn in, they swear allegiance to the Queen, to do good by men, and so help me God. The same for our judges in the United Kingdom, the same for our politicians, because this is where the truth is rooted. This is why Great Britain flourished. But since the coronation, what has happened? When the Queen came to the throne, 4.6% of babies were born outside of marriage. The figure is now 46%. When the Queen came to the throne, there were about 350,000 marriages. Today, with a population of 50 million, today with 66 million in our nation, by the way, I've got to say, Australia is not crowded. Brisbane, it's so spacious. And do you really call this winter? That is a joke. That is a complete joke. And then you're sitting there with your leggings on and your coats. I'm like, oh, really? But anyway, we've got, today it's 2016, with 16 million more people in the population, 240,000 marriages, so the marriage rate is going down. 1967, divorce is rare, affecting 34,000 couples. Today, about 120,000 couples every year. In 1967, so it's 50 years ago exactly, the Abortion Act was passed and there was a decriminalisation of homosexuality. And I'm going to look at what's happened since that time, so since the 1960s, the decade of the sexual revolution. Martin Luther said this: "If I profess with the loudest voice and clearest exposition every portion of the word of God, except precisely that little point which which the world and the devil are at the moment attacking, I am not confessing Christ, however boldly I may be professing him. Where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is proved, and to be steady on all the battlefronts besides is mere flight and disgrace if he flinches at that point." So where is the gospel under attack?
In the parliaments of our land.
In the parliaments of our land? Schools?
Everywhere.
You see, no one, just let me say as a church, no one's going to worry. If you do food banks and provide nurseries, no one's going to worry. If you go and stop the traffic, no one's going to worry. If you send money to Africa and put water aid into Africa, no one's going to worry, are they? No? Because that conforms with stuff that people think is morally good. By the way, we need to be doing all of that stuff. Food banks, homelessness, we need to be right there on the front line. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be there. Absolutely, we are there. But where is the gospel attack? Which issues? On the protection of life, Genesis 1. Being made in the image of God, Genesis 1. The pattern for family, Genesis 1. And the uniqueness of Jesus Christ, his place, his name in the public space. We, his church, his bride, have allowed his name to become absent from the public space. We've become embarrassed by the gospel. We've become ashamed by the gospel, ashamed where the gospel is under attack, not realising its power to speak and to penetrate. We're not being ready to become fools for Christ. So let's look at what happens when these things occur, when these things are not respected. So where truth is under attack, where gospel truth is under attack, where the image of God is under attack, where a primary commandment of God, thou shalt not kill, comes under attack. The Abortion Act, 1967. We allowed abortion in extremely strict circumstances within the law, but what it did was it created the possibility, so we then very quickly had social abortion. In 1967, there were 21,000 abortions in our nation. Now, every year, there are about 210,000 abortions in our population. Over 9 million abortions as we head for the 50th year of the passing of the Abortion Act. That is a silent Holocaust. That is 1/7 of the population of Great Britain. How big is Melbourne? I'm in Sydney. I'm not in Melbourne. I'm not in Sydney. I haven't even been to Melbourne or Sydney yet. How big is the population of Brisbane?
2 million.
2 million. So it's Brisbane wiped out 4 times over plus. It's all been done, it's legal. Doctors have cooperated. Now let me say in all of this that the gospel is always the answer. Because for the hurting woman, for the woman in the unplanned pregnancy, Jesus can rescue and redeem. For the woman who's had the abortion, Jesus wants to forgive. We don't need to keep this silent for fear of offence, because actually we want to bring this into the light so that we can deal with it. And of course, the bride of Christ is the answer, because we can look after, you can look after the however many abortions there are per state in this state. Do we know?
About 15,000.
About 15,000 per year?
4.5 million people.
Yeah, per year. So we need to be offering the homes, the sanctuaries. No truth line ever stands in a silo. So everything I'm going to say throughout the whole of this talk, you've got to hold the whole thing together, because it's it's about how the gospel as a whole is under attack and how it builds. 1978, because of reproductive technologies, we have the possibility of creating life in a test tube. Louise Brown, the first test tube baby, is born. That's 1978. You then go to the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act of 1990. For the first time, it is possible to create life, because we now can, in a test tube, with the express purpose of experimenting upon it and then destroying it. So that's something that we permit. Then in 2004, we have the first license to clone a human embryo. What is cloning? Man making man in the image of man. So you go from taking a life 1967 to making a life 1978 to faking a life 2004, and then to 2008, the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act, where you have for the first time the creation of animal-human hybrid embryos. That's the mixing of cows' eggs with human sperm. Now this is all in the hallowed halls of Westminster. They go and make a vote. It's all legal. It's all done with legal argument, with argument, with medical argument. All of the elites are involved. It disavows God. It does not recognise that God made us in the image. And the statistics, the abortion statistics, we don't even know how many babies have been lost, how many embryos have been lost through fertility treatments, or through, for instance, Save Your Siblings, create a bank of embryos and select an embryo to help a sick older sibling. Sadly, the science doesn't work. What happens to the embryos that don't match? They're incinerated. They're discarded. We also now have the possibility of 3-parent embryos. So that's the genetic DNA of 2 women on an embryo, on an ensuing child. And the push, at the moment we say that this is for medical purposes, the push will be for same-sex couples, because it's now possible, same-sex couples to have their genetic DNA on a child. And this is what can then happen, because this kind of thing is possible. This is a woman who wants to look like a man, transgenders to be a man, but decides that she wants to have a child. So she has a child and is breastfeeding the child. When she's finished breastfeeding the child, she's going to go back to looking like a man, to being a man. She can't be a man, but that's what she's going to do. She's then going to raise the child as the father, and her partner, a woman, is going to be the mother. Is that crazy? That's where you get, if you want to self-define order, if you want to just make things up, because all these things are possible, this is what now has, this is the first one in America, there's now one in the United Kingdom. What happens if you're a professional and you speak on these things? So this is one of our cases, Tammy Downs. From now on, all the cases I put up are cases that we've dealt with at the Christian Legal Centre. Investigated by the General Medical Council because she helped women to keep their babies. Who reported her? Who reported her? Fellow doctors. Not the women who kept their babies. This is a group that shows pictures of aborted babies outside clinics. They actually get turnarounds from the clinics. Women actually do stop and don't have abortions. They were arrested for causing harassment, alarm and distress outside the clinic. I've been told to stay away from this group. I got a phone call from this group. They were in the police cells. I went down, got them out of the police cells. They've been strip searched. DNA had been taken. They waited 18 months before their trial. The prosecution were pressing it hard. It is right to say these pictures cause harassment, alarm and distress. Why? Because abortion protests itself. But if we can't look at it, then why is it legal? We sanitize it, we medicalize it, we take it behind closed doors. Doctors put on their white coats and their surgical gloves, and this is what they do. This is 11 weeks, 10 weeks. Doctors filmed being prepared to abort babies because they were female. A request increasingly made in the United Kingdom because of our varying demographics. So this was actually prepared to do that. The Crown Prosecution Service said that it was not in the public interest to prosecute the doctors. So we sought to bring a private prosecution. We were told that the footage is there for everyone to see. You can go back and Google it. Sometimes I play it, but you can go back and Google it tonight. The judge said to us, you haven't got the footage. So we said, please subpoena the witness, bring the witness to, bring the journalist who made the film to court, or hand over the film as the Crown Prosecution Service, as the police had said they would do for us. They wouldn't do that. We pressed on and we pressed on. The judge said, if you continue with this case, Miss Minichiello, if you continue with this case, we're going to order costs against you, because Aisling Hubert, she's just a straw man for your campaign, isn't she? No, Aisling Hubert is a campaigner in her own right who cares passionately about this. For trying to bring a private prosecution that the prosecutor had already said there was prima facie evidence, but that it wasn't in the public interest, we were landed with a costs bill of £47,000. That's $90,000 Australian dollars, isn't it? And that's one of the things that they want to do to the Christians. They want to do, don't take your case, because we'll come after you for costs. And I'm increasingly saying, come after us for costs. It's not that we've got the money in the bank, but God, somehow we're still standing, yeah? 20 years on doing these cases. By God's grace, by a miracle, by faith, we are standing. And the 10-minute rule bill to decriminalise abortion up to birth. Passed, introduced by a Conservative MP. The bill succeeded by 170 votes to 142. The bill fell because our Parliament was prorogued, but will come back in the autumn. And the British Medical Association, so the Doctors' Union, has voted also to support that, to decriminalise abortion up to birth. The do no harm principle. This is the medical elites. This is the doctor elite. This is what happens when you exchange the truth for a lie. This is what happens when you do not value life enough. So you end up in a death culture. Now, who has God got to speak in this death culture? Who? Only us. He's only got us. So Family Voice Australia, Rise up. Be not ashamed of his truth. Be not ashamed to bring a culture of life to this land. Be not ashamed of offering hope, the hope of Jesus Christ, to women in unplanned pregnancies. Be not ashamed of taking in the babies. Because the church network can do this. And the church network has to believe that it can do this. Because this is a massive injustice in our midst, and it has to stop. And I believe that we can make abortion history. I do. I do. And I pray that future generations will look at us and say, what were they doing? The generation that killed its children will be killed by its children. Well done in Australia for resisting euthanasia and assisted suicide. Continue, continue, continue. Do not relent on that. Last week we were in court. My team was in court on another case where an activist with motor neurone disease says that he wants the ability to take his own life. He wants the court to intervene. This is a campaign. The laws are there to protect the vulnerable, the weak. The laws are there to protect, in an increasingly fragmented society, lonely Aunt Alice, who needs to be spoon-fed, who's alone, who's got an estate. It would be much easier to give her an injection of potassium chloride than to care for her. And that will be the end. It will not be a civilized society. And increasingly we're seeing in the United Kingdom, with the fragmentation of the family, God's first building block, without the honour to mother and father. Why? Because the mums and dads were 60s kids, 60s adults. They killed their babies. Their babies will kill them. Rising incidences of elder abuse. You know, if it's all about me, if it's not about being made in the image of God, if it's not about family, if it's not about honour, if it's not about the raising of the children in the way that they should go, if it's not about looking after, if it's not about that first building block, which then extends into community, then this is the way that it goes. If it's all about my human rights, if it's all about individualism, this is where we end up. You kill your babies, you kill off the old people. Pattern for family. 1960s, the pill, sexual revolution, pop music burst, suddenly everyone was free post-war. And suddenly sex became recreational, not procreational. You could have sex without ties. And everyone was doing it. And so then what you had was the rise in cohabitation, and these relationships where you didn't have the marriage bond. You then get to a situation where marriage gets deflated in law and in the public eye, because people start living together, cohabiting. And then, it's interesting, isn't it, that once cohabitation was called living in sin. Well, we've not heard that for a long time, have we? And actually, cohabitation laws reflecting marriage laws. Then you get no-fault divorce. And of course, the church, pretty easy with it all, mainly. Yeah? Yeah, not, because actually that's the key back then. No-fault, not cherishing the marriage bond. And you know what? We then all start calling one another partners, not husband and wife. And husband and wife loses its value, marriage loses its value. And then a political lobby being birthed out from the feminist movement, and you then, from out of the feminist movement, sexual revolution movement, what you then get is a sexual politics movement, homosexual politics movement, that says, oh, hang on, we want our rights, we want our love recognised in law too. In fact, we're husband and husband. We're wife and wife. In fact, just give us, please recognise in law, because our relationship is just the same as yours. It's the morally equivalent to yours. And we had no moral standing. So trying to make the case in the public space was really hard, because at this point, marriage was a shambles. And so suddenly husband and wife started taking back the terms. And then they said, it's just about rights, just about my human rights, nothing else. Civil partnerships. And civil partnerships soon looked like marriage, were in fact treated like marriage, and in the United Kingdom became marriage. Now, I know that you have civil unions here, but you must resist same-sex marriage. I want Australia, modern Australia. No one will expect Australia to resist same-sex marriage. Rise up, Family Voice. Be not ashamed of the gospel, because I believe you'll be a beacon unto the world, and you will save your nation if you resist same-sex marriage, because it's an attack on the gospel. It's an attack on the image of the bridegroom coming for his bride. And you can lead the world. You can lead the world back. I don't say that. I say that for real. It's going to be will it be you? Will it be South Korea? Will it be Hungary? From somewhere in the world will emerge a nation that says no. And you have not yet said yes. Family Voice? Family Voice. Will you be that movement? Will you be that movement that rises up? Now, some of you are going to have to learn to use Twitter, or you're going to have to get your children using Twitter, because you're going to have to rise up a younger generation. Yes, Facebook, all of it, Instagram, the whole lot. With all of this comes pornography. Statistics in the United Kingdom, I find these statistics too unbearable. I almost can't believe they're true. I think they seem high, but even if they were a tenth true, it still makes me unwell. Yeah? Church leaders accessing porn, 30%, 42% of men say they've got a porn addiction. Christians who believe that the church doesn't deal with it. This makes us sick, yeah? In our universities, out of some of the universities in the afternoons, the largest internet traffic is going to porn sites. And you know what we're also getting is a real increase in mental health issues, particularly with our men on this stuff. So you see, we've got to clean up our act in the church. And we've really, and we've got to help our men to be men. You've got to help the men have got to help the men to be men, good fathers, pure. You know, and I worry about my three girls. You know, and I get right up to my boy's face and I say, "You're never looking, you know. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Think of your sisters and think of your bride." But you know, we've got a church, which church is about making safe our children. They are in a battle. When they go to school, it's not a safe place. When they open up their tablet, it's not safe. So we at church, we the parents, the church, has to help them to live in this world and to speak the gospel. And in the gospel is the power, and in the gospel is righteousness. And this is what we've got to help them to pursue, that the pursuit of the gospel is not an I love Jesus. What would Jesus do? I love him. He loves me. It's one faith amongst many. It's another, you know. Honestly, if that's all it is, and sometimes that's how we reduce it, we privatize Jesus. Like he's a coach, like he's a personal coach or something. He makes a demand on our life and he demands righteousness. And that's what we've got to instruct our children to. So that they look different, so that they are not oppressed by society, but rather that they are emboldened to speak the life that comes from knowing Jesus Christ. And also so that they're pure. You see, they want to be pure. Don't imagine how good it would be if we could just boundary our children. If we could just make them safe. That's exactly what they want. You know what? It's what 16-year-olds want. They do. They don't want to be told what the school currently tells them is that this is how it all happens, when you're ready. That's just very unsafe for them. With all of this comes the laws. After the practice, you then get the approval in law. Homosexuality decriminalised 1967, Gay Liberation Front, first Gay Pride Festival 1992, Equality Act. You're not allowed to discriminate in the provision of goods and services on the basis of sexual orientation. Age of consent equalised from 21 to 18, then to 16. We start getting reports of homophobic bullying. And if you don't approve of the way that I live, you're a bully. It's right that we need the best arguments, what Ros and David were saying. But you know what? You know what the other side have done? What have they used? Have they used arguments? They've used and emotion and stories. If you go and look at the parliamentary record of how same-sex marriage was put into place in the United Kingdom, it was all emotion. There was no argument at all on the floor of the House. I was at the Church of England Synod 2 weeks ago. It was homosexual people standing up and saying how the church had hurt them and it was spiritual abuse. With this Adoption Act 2002, Gender Recognition Act, giving a transsexuals acquired gender, and a Civil Partnerships Act. That then completely redefines family, because it's now in law possible to have a family, 2 men, 2 women, a man and a woman, cohabiting or married, and each of those having children either naturally or by way of fertility treatment or by way of fostering and adoption. So now the family unit is the assault on Genesis 1 again. The family unit is entirely redefined, and then this is what a family can look like. And the Conservative Prime Minister said, so I don't support gay marriage despite being a Conservative. I support gay marriage because I'm a Conservative. But this is worse. The Archbishop of Canterbury, it's clearly essential that stable and faithful same-sex relationships should, where those involved want it, be recognised and supported with as much dignity and the same legal effect as marriage. Now you will see him today on Facebook talking about Jesus. He talks a great conversion story. He talks about Jesus being your friend. But he will not talk about Jesus being your judge. When I went to Synod a couple of weeks ago, I was booed. And the Synod was given the chance 3 times to put Jesus on the face of the legislation and refused to do that. And they voted for, and all of the bishops, it was unanimous, voted to ban gay cure therapy. And they voted to look at liturgy for a transsexual's new gender so that they could rebaptize someone in their new gender. And this is the Archbishop of York. He's a bit of a folk hero, but this is exactly what he was saying. And then at the time, the Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, said, I don't know what all the fuss is about gay marriage. Soon it will become entirely normal, and so it is in our schools, look. King and King, and Tango Makes 3, Jack and Jim, Uncle Bobby's Wedding. Here are the books. Last month, children are told to wear rainbow colours, give £1 to the homosexual charity. If you resist, you get into trouble. The kids don't want to resist. Now schools hire floats to go on gay pride. I say we do Jesus pride. They're out, I'm proud of Jesus. I'm not ashamed of Jesus. And I say that we fill the streets of Brisbane with the joy of knowing Jesus Christ, with the joy of faith and family and freedom. We fill it with crosses and beauty and light and love and glory and young people and music and all the stuff that is good, and we fill our streets with that. After homosexuality, after same-sex marriage, and you're already getting it in Australia, and I think it's quite good that you're getting it ahead of time, because that you will see exactly where it goes, and this may help you to resist harder. Primary school books, My Princess Boy. If you see a princess boy, will you like him for who he is? Story of love, tolerance, and acceptance. It's all about love. It's all about love. But you see, the thing about it is we need love with truth. It is not loving to say to a 14-year-old boy, we are going to suppress your hormones. That is not loving. It's not loving It's abuse. It's not loving to a 6-year-old. We've got 3 cases of 6-year-olds at the moment who are identifying in the opposite gender, and the school is allowing little boys to wear skirts. And if people object, if a child gets it wrong, they're the ones that are punished. Their toileting policies, their school policies are all changed, and the sports policies have all changed to accommodate the 6-year-old. How is it kind to leave a 6-year-old in that delusion? To allow a 6-year-old boy to wear a dress to school and to call him Jane? How is that kind? It is not kind. It is deeply unkind. And what's worse, the medical profession, you can't get help to help a child live in the body that they were born in. So align the head to the body. Instead, we're giving them hormone treatments. We're suppressing prepubescent children, suppressing puberty for them. We're then doing double mastectomies. We're doing chemical castrations. This is happening. It's not even legal. It's not been passed in Parliament, but it's being practiced by the medical profession. And had I not given my slideshow earlier to you, I would have actually given you the front pages of the newspapers over the weekend in our country, where the Education Secretary is saying, and the Prime Minister is saying, that they're going to accelerate laws on transsexualism to ensure that all of this happens. Now it's state sanctioned. You see, people think, again, I don't want to be too, hear me, it's not being over, but how did a Soviet Union happen? How did a Nazi Germany happen? Well, people walked in with their eyes, people were propagandized. You see, if you grow up with all of this, how are you supposed to think any differently? If at 4, you're watching My Princess Boy, if everything is normalised and you're being told by people that you're supposed to trust that you can choose your gender, be free about whether you're bi, psi, experiment. Just, if you're told all of this stuff, then you can't think straight, can you? And you get damaged. And so it all happens because we're just kind of propagandized. And the church goes on silent. And you know what happened in Nazi Germany? The trains used to go by to the concentration camps, and the churches would sing louder. Where is the truth under attack? So gender-neutral uniforms. Where does it all lead? Street preachers are convicted. You've got your hero here in this church, Daniel Scott. He was with us 10 years ago in the United Kingdom. And it was really the warning for legislation that was really part of how Christian Concern really got activated. That if people are offended by your speech, you can be criminalised. Well, that's what happened to Daniel Scott. We thank God for his courage. But prosecutors are being told now that although the words preached are included in a version of the Bible, 16 of them, this does not mean that they are incapable of amounting to a Public Order Act offence in Great Britain 2016. To say to someone that Jesus is the only God is not a matter of truth, the court said. A preacher in prison to a sex offender's prison preached from 1 Corinthians 6. A transsexual male who was in there for rape of a child complained about Barry. He said it breached his rights as a prisoner under his discrimination rules. He complained about his sermon. He was a gardener and he volunteered in the chapel and preached every week. And as a result of that, Gary was forced out of his job. And the judge said that prisoners are a protected class. He chose to go to the chapel service. And that was from reading 1 Corinthians 6. And the judge said that he should have chosen a better passage. That, if you're going to speak on a passage, why choose that one? There are better bits of the Bible to give to prisoners. No, seriously. This is live. We're waiting for the judgment at the moment. Okay. Conferences banned from public places, from government buildings. Social work students removed from their course because on Facebook they say that they believe in marriage. Said that he would not, he transgressed boundaries which are not deemed appropriate for someone entering the social work profession. So it's a bar to office. Civil registrars lose their jobs because they don't want to preside over same-sex ceremonies. All my cases. Paediatrician removed from adoption panel because she wants to abstain from placing a child into a two-male household. A magistrate loses his position, is reprimanded by the Lord Chancellor and the Lord Chief Justice because he said that the child needed to stay with the foster parents rather than to be placed with two men. Councillors removed from their party for saying that marriage is between a man and a woman. Adoption agencies closed. All my cases. Children put in isolation for wearing a purity ring. It's a matter of uniform policy. The same school hands out condoms and morning after pills. Stop seeing that this one is a colleague asks her about what God thinks about gay marriage, and she says that God loves her but can't approve of the marriage. She gets dismissed for gross misconduct. Stop singing songs about Jesus, otherwise we'll remove your grant to a nursery school teacher. Remove that Facebook post, Dwayne Lopez, that speaks about Jesus, otherwise you'll lose your job. Nurse suspended for offering prayer for gross misconduct. Teacher suspended for giving her testimony to a student. Remove that cross from your van, electrician. It may offend Muslims in your area. Doctor, don't speak about Jesus in a consulting room. You are warned. You will work on a Sunday. Your cross is not a Christian symbol. Remove your cross. And then rising up. That's the outworking of atheistic humanism. I know I'm close to the end of time. I'm going to take 5 more minutes if you'll bear with me on this bit, which I'm going to rush through. The rise in the Muslim population. Now we have 8.1% of all school children are Muslim. 14.5% of the prison population is Muslim. The first name in our country of boys born is Muhammad. What happens with Muslims is this. Remember, God loves everyone. Everyone's made in his image. Remember, God wants to rescue everyone. So what we have here is, again, a political ideology of Islam. What happens with Muslims is that they come into a country and they segregate, they don't integrate. So I'm going to challenge you that if there's a segregated part of Brisbane where Muslims are, you need to go in and plant a church. That's where you need to be. Because actually the mosque becomes the place where their community is ruled from. Sharia law is implemented there from the mosque. So they begin to build a community within a community. And so here you see Bradford, Luton, Slough, Birmingham, Leicester, Manchester, London. A good percentage of the population is Muslim, and many of these cities have Muslim mayors and Muslim councillors. And that hard atheistic secularism tolerates this. Why? Because who's the author of both of these false ideologies? And what's the only thing that can stand against them? Jesus. In our universities, Muslim money has bought up the universities. Churches are becoming mosques. Halal meat, the Muslims own the abattoirs of Great Britain. So you can't actually eat non-halal meat in our restaurants, in our food outlets. That's a form of subjugation. The West End of London is owned by Qatar. The East End of London is owned by Abu Dhabi. We have 85 Sharia councils. We have a parallel legal system because the councils operate within the mosques. We have honour crime, and we are rescuing people at Christian Concern. We are safe housing people. It's one of our ministries. We do a number of things that I haven't told you about. It's because I'm presenting this picture tonight, and I keep you here till midnight if I told you everything I could tell you. Sharia zones, Islamic banking, open demonstrations. This is freedom of speech. Don't read from the King James Bible. Don't read from 1 Corinthians 6. But kill the infidel. Behead those who insult Islam. That's free speech on the streets of London. Homegrown radicals, second or third generation. The Manchester attacker attended Didsbury Mosque, which was a Methodist church. This is ISIS claiming it. The explosive devices were detonated in the Shameless concert area, resulting in 30 crusaders being killed and 70 others being wounded. And what comes next will be more severe on the worshippers of what? Of the cross. That's Manchester, homegrown radical. London, the same, with access to Parliament. What has happened? Basically, we have thought as Christians that we're one view amongst many in the public space. Multiculturalism has failed. Culture is religion externalised. Do you want secularism, which is actually atheism? That leaves you out in the cold. Look at my cases. Do you want Islam? That's Abu Dhabi. Or do you want Christianity? Do you want Jesus? Yes. Who so loves everyone that what he gives us a system whereby people are, where there is faith and there is family and freedom. He is so political. He's King of Australia. He's Lord of Lords. It's public. It's true. And we are on mute. We somehow cower. We kind of think, oh, let everyone have their space. And we don't assert his truth. In a good way. I mean, assert it in a way that's appropriate for the circumstance. And the Muslims think that this mess that we're in fact Christianity. They think that all these, naked women and drunk men and all that stuff, they think that's Christianity. They think it's to blame, and they think that Islam is the answer. So this is how they present Islam. Look at this, 70,000 men in Birmingham. 70,000 men. I'd love to see 70,000 Christian men. And I'm going to say Christian men. Because actually I think that one of some of the casualties, I think the casualty in Britain, even more than the women and children, is your white working class male. He doesn't know what to do. The women have got the house and the kids. Their father isn't there. They've got no framework for faith. Their land, the community, they just don't know what to do. They haven't got a voice. They don't know, they need the gospel. And we've got quite a lot of converts to Islam suffering attacks, critique Islam. We've got a lady in the Heathrow airport who critiqued Islam and actually lost her job, same as an occupational health therapist. The only effective response to radical Islam and to secularism is radical Christianity, is repentance, reformation, revival. Is to not be ashamed of the gospel. Is to understand the times. And we who want to win the world for Jesus Christ, if we want to win Australia back, if we want to save Australia, but understand same-sex marriage, euthanasia, this stuff that's being put in your schools, all this safe school stuff, which is deeply unsafe, that is actually, it's an attack on the gospel, and it's a first-order issue. Okay? It's not a secondary issue. Jesus is not private, he's public. The gospel is his righteousness. And if we don't contend for his righteousness in the public space, the lights go out and people can't know him. We end up in this chaos where it's really hard for people to know him. Because they become blind, they become propagandized, they don't know how to behave, but how now to live. So this is what we proclaim, this is what we're proclaiming at Family Voice. As we move from years, decades, this organisation, of course, has the stamp of David and Roz. Any organisation does when people have been in it for that long. You think, how can it survive? Well, there's a job to do, isn't there? And the greatest, we can honour them by honouring Ashley. And by saying, let's Let's give this, let this organisation come forth. Let the church rise up. Awake, arise, O church. It's not just Family Voice, it's awake, arise, O church, wherever we are. And come and get informed by being on Family Voice's mailing list. Please sign up for my presentation. You will then get emails from me as well. You can bin them, delete them, come off the list, or just be informed by them. Because we need to pray, we need to repent, we need to revive. We need a long horizon, a wider scope, a deeper critique, a better network, vision and voice. Voices and platforms, visibility and practice. We need not to be ashamed of Jesus Christ. Thank you so much.